Please welcome the moderator of this session, Don Ross, Director, Sales and Marketing, Scranton Manufacturing Company, Incorporated, and the Division Director of SWANA's Collection and Transfer Technical Division.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what I believe is the last session of the day before the trade show opens downstairs for the opening reception and welcoming event. Welcome to WASTECON, co-located here with the International Solid Waste Association. It's really great to be here in Baltimore today and the rest of the week. It's fun meeting everybody and learning what everyone else is doing in different parts of the world. Before we get going here, I want to kind of describe what this panel's about. I don't think I can comment to folks in the room that, waste collectors around the world provide an essential service like water and power, and the proper management of waste is essential to public health and safety. I think everyone also understands that the women and men of our industry make a very complicated task look easy. The garbage goes away. And we all know the complexities behind that. So it's important that we all keep that in the front of our minds. I think we can also agree that the advancements in technology are coming quickly. Here in North America and in Europe, things that were rare just 10 years ago are now standard. Roll carts, automation, rear vision cameras, global positioning sensors on collection vehicles, radio frequency identification, telematics, route optimization, and the list goes on. But thankfully, because of the internet and the connectivity that's available to all of us today, everyone around the globe has the unique opportunity to learn together as new technologies and processes emerge. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce a panel of experts that's going to come up here and talk about smart technologies in collection and transfer. And we've got an international panel to really share a lot of different things, what's happening in other places. And one of the things that one of our speakers is going to talk about is what's called the fourth industrial revolution. And there's a report floating around. Everyone should grab a copy of that. Let's talk about the first three industrial revolutions very quickly. They each happened about 100 years apart. The first one, in and about 1784, was the invention of mechanical production, steam power, and ultimately railroads. In the second industrial revolution, in and about 1870, things like mass production, assembly lines, and electric power were started. I know I remember the third industrial revolution, but I'm sure a lot of our young professionals may not. This one occurred in and about 1969, 1970. And that's where the advent of automated production, electronics, PLCs or programmable logic controllers, and computers entered our world. And the fourth revolution, the one that we're going to talk about today, is occurring right now. And it's occurring 50 years sooner than the 100-year pattern set by the previous three industrial revolutions. At this point, I'm going to start to introduce our panelists, bring them up on stage, and ask them why they're here, why it's important, why they think they're adding value to this panel, and why it's important to you, our audience today. And they're all going to contribute from a little bit different perspective. First, though, I want to remind everybody, we're going to be taking questions today from the Slido app. So if everyone hasn't seen this yet, I've got a slide with some instructions on how to download Slido and queue us questions, because we want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions and get you engaged in the conversation. So, in alphabetical order, I'd like to first bring up Vivek Agrawal. Vivek is the Trustee Secretary of the Center for Development Communication and Chairman of the International Solid Waste Association's Technical Working Group for Collection and Transportation. Next up, Jason Gates. Welcome. Next up, Jason Gates is the co-founder of Compology. Compology are innovators in sensor technologies, and we're going to hear more about advanced sensors. And not only that, they're coming, they're already here. Don Diego Padilla is the vice president of FleetMind. FleetMind is an industry-leading company in vehicle telematics and the connected truck, as well as the Internet of Things. That's why I've invited Don today. Antonis Mavropoulos, I want to invite him back to the stage. I'm sure some of you met him earlier. He must be off on a call. Here he is. Antonis needs no formal introduction because he's been up and down here all day, but he is the president of the International Solid Waste Association. And last but certainly not least is Mark Rogoff. Mark Rogoff is with SCS Engineers, and he is the Collection and Transfer International Board Representative. And I appreciate all his help as we manage the technical division. Thank you, Mark. Okay, guys, 30 seconds. I want to know why you're here today. Why is it important that you're part of this panel on smart technologies? Vivek.
India is just beginning its journey towards waste management, so as with the emerging economies. So we thought, let's learn from the developing economies. And since India has also advanced into IT, so how this can merge and can deliver something good for the waste management. So that's
excellent. It's great to have you, Vivek. Finally meeting in person, all the way from India.
Yeah.
Jason, why are you here?
So at Compology, we put sensors inside front-load and open-top roll-off containers to monitor their location, fullness, and service confirmations. We use that information to streamline operations, enhance customer service, and simplify analysis. So you can see here in this slide, on the left is a picture of one of our sensors installed in an open-top roll-off container. On the right is some of the images that are actually coming off of our sensors, which get used for a variety of different purposes by haulers, regulators, waste generators, and even waste processors. So we've had sensors in the field now for over 5 years and have seen the development of sensors and industrial applications start to develop. I actually brought one of the sensors with us, which, Reza, if you would pass that around, we can get hands-on with the technology.
That's great. Thank you, Jason. Don Diego,
yes.
Tell us why you're here.
So FleetMind is our specialty is onboard technology. We connect up to 16 different impulses around a truck, and we send that back to the back office. We integrate all the back office systems with the mobile vehicle in real time. We've been doing this since 1996. So we've been doing IoT for a long, long time, and we bring a practical knowledge. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to share with you guys for about 15, 20 minutes the practical applications of that technology.
Thank you, Don. Mark, I know you have a counterpoint today.
Okay. While I'm a real strong advocate of artificial intelligence, automation, and smart technologies, doing a number of studies across the country, I've been real concerned about the impact of these technologies on employment. A number of major studies by several organizations over the last few years have suggested roughly about 38% of the employees in our industry, their jobs will disappear in the next 15 years. And these range from manufacturing all the way to environmental monitoring. So we need to start a discussion, I think, now on what happens to these employees.
Excellent. Point, counterpoint. And I hope to get all of you engaged in that conversation. Automated is a big topic, and we've been doing it for quite a while here. And there's tremendous benefits. But I think Mark brings up some valid points that we must all consider. At this point, I'm going to flip it to Antonis. He's going to join me at the podium. He's going to tell us why he's here. And he's going to kick off his presentation on the fourth industrial revolution. Welcome, Antonis.
Thank you, Dan. Well, the reason we started this initiative in ISWA was because we wanted to make the industry aware that a huge shift is coming. We want to warn the industry that there are serious waves of change that will leave nothing without substantial impact. We wanted to say that if the waste management industry thinks it will be kept out of this movement, they are making a big mistake. On purpose, we restricted the survey, for practical reasons as well, to the technical and futuristic attitudes without involving the social problems, because the social problems are very, very important. But before I start, let me tell you this. I discussed with someone this morning, and he told me, well, after all, what will happen? Some robots will substitute some workers, and these workers will find another job, and this is the way things are done. I replied to him, the power of software companies to acquire and transform whole industrial sectors is not comparable to any other time in our history. I told him, look at what platform companies like Amazon are doing with the food sector, with the retailing sector. Look how Apple cannibalized the music industry. And then think again if the only victims will be the workers. It will be much more blood in case you are not prepared. So having said that, I would like to present you some of the results, and I'm pretty sure that our panel will make important comments. I will just stick on the results, and then every 2 or 3 slides I will stop and you can comment whatever you like. So let's start with this. Well, the first thing is to understand the identity of the survey. So what we did is that we started with a rather low target, but finally we have 1,000 questionnaires. 73% of the participants come from the private sector because we were specifically targeting the private sector, and 27% of them from the public sector. 44 of them are executive officers or board members, and 56% of them non-executives. And if you see the geographical distribution, roughly half of them are from Europe. Now, let's start the real stuff. Question number 7, how much do you know about the fourth industrial revolution? I would say that a lot is just 14%, and then if you count it with something, roughly 70% of the participants consider that they have an idea of what is it. And then we have 29% saying we know nothing. If you consider, or very few things, if you consider that these guys are all of them engineers or high-level officers, for me that's pretty disappointing.
Mm-hmm. So Antonis, can we take a quick survey? Show of hands, how many people have heard of the fourth industrial revolution before I discussed it? There's a few. What do you think, percentage-wise? Okay,
we're doing a little bit better. Now, let's get to the stuff. Do you think that the fourth industrial revolution will affect the waste and recycling industry? Well, interestingly, even they don't know a lot about the industrial revolution, they feel that 66% of them feel that there will be definitely an impact, and 31% of them somewhat yes, which means that 97% gets a feeling about it even if they don't know the details. And I would like to have your comments on that.
Yeah, this will definitely have an impact, and there is no doubt but whether it will have a positive impact or a negative impact, that has to be seen. Because if we look at the positive side of it, it will bring a lot of efficiency and efficacy in the execution. But on the darker side of it, as Mark has mentioned, it may deprive people and displace people from the livelihood. That's a big challenge, particularly in countries like ours.
You know, I think I've been marketing technology for 10 years. And I think there's a lot, 10 years ago I was trying to convince people that they needed technology to get better and to grow their business. I don't have to do that anymore. Today everybody knows they need technology, but they're not intimate with it, which goes back to your previous slide as to how many of them know about it. Somewhat they know about it, but they don't know about it because they haven't actually used it. And if you compare that in the waste industry to other industries, according to the survey they did in 2015 by IDC, International Data Corp, there were they surveyed 2,300 executives around the world, and 48% of them had already deployed IoT solutions, and 58% of them said that it was strategic to their growth. Now, if you compare that to the waste industry, we're way behind. So I think this subject is, appropriate.
So why do you think we are a slow adopter?
I think we're slow to change.
Just a traditional business?
Traditionally, I think we're very slow to change as an industry. I don't think this has been a high-tech market for a very long time. But now everybody knows, we got to get better at what we do, and the only way to get better is with business intelligence. And the only way to get business intelligence is deploy technology.
Great. Okay. Now, let's move to the next. Question number 9. If you answered in the previous question, if your answer is yes or somewhat yes, please specify how big you expect the impact. Again, we have 50% expecting a major impact and 45% some impact. And then we start a series of very interesting answers. Now, assess the impact you expect on the waste management and recycling industry from the following elements. So we gave them those elements and we asked them to rank from 1 to 4. Now, it's very interesting what they rank first. First, they believe that the new materials will have the most important impact. I respect that in many cases. Second, advanced sensors. Third, Internet of Things. What's pretty interesting is that 4th and 5 are mobile apps and social media, while robots are just 7th. Now, keep this in mind because you have to comment it together with the next one. When we make the question, please check the innovations that will be available in 2030, 80% believe that in 2030 we will have fully robotic waste sorting stations. 72% that we will have fully robotic recycling plants, which is kind of different than the stations. 62% of them believe that we will have chatbots guiding citizens for waste prevention and recycling, a very interesting point. And 53% that we will have digital consulting and engineering, and 52% robotic bins. Let's comment now.
So what that tells me is that no one solution is going to be the answer.
Yeah.
And it's going to end up being a combination. And so as a technology provider, what we think a lot about is how are these different solutions going to interact with one another? And when we go in and we work with hauling companies and governments and waste generators, the question about integration, how data is going to flow between different products or solutions is always top of mind. And so that's something that we focus a lot on.
Or does digital technology tie the entire waste supply chain together? From the beginning to the end, through the, waste origination point all the way through the processing and ultimate disposal in certain cases. Could technology do that? Isn't it already doing some of that today?
And it is. And that's what's driving the industry. More and more, our customers want one truth. If you have multiple systems and they're segregated and they're siloed, you have multiple truths. Mm-hmm. More and more, the business leaders want one truth. And that's what this does. The digital technology gives them one truth.
So they're all interconnected?
Yes.
Or it could be in the very near future?
Yes. And I think it's going to be a lot faster than by 2030.
What about robots? Mark?
What?
What about robots?
I see it coming more and more as people start talking about drones to reduce their cost of monitoring, getting into locations that are very hard for people and trucks to get into. Mm-hmm. But again, I go back to my topic. What happens to those people that were doing that monitoring or driving trucks?
It's an interesting point. We talk about automation, and one of the first things is job elimination or reduction in workers. And, through my experience, that hasn't occurred because we're short on qualified operators. We're short on qualified fleet mechanics. The industry as a whole doesn't really have a very good, strong bench in the field per se, and there's a case of redeployment that occurs after an automation takes effect. I mean, again, that's based on my experience. Perhaps as automation is more widespread, you might see some of that.
You know, but there is two extremes, like when you are looking at the manpower there and manpower at our end, that these are two ends, like two extremes of anything. Like we have manpower and manpower available for everything.
You have unlimited
and we have challenged to engage them. And this is one avenue. And this is considered as one of the softest way to automate things like robotic things. These are the easiest things to be implemented. But how much displacement will be there and how that will lead to other things? It may lead to some kind of law and order even, when unemployment will be there and livelihood issue. But ultimately, the positive side of it is when you automate things, it may give dignity to the people who are engaged into it. Ultimately, waste collection is not a healthy business.
And I think, Vivek, to your point, I think we have to ask ourselves, why are we automating? I know here in North America, safety was a very, very important factor.
Still is.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't want to diminish the importance of that at all. So by automating, we were able to save lives and protect human health. Situations different. India,
Oh no, it's just like we have done a lot of surveys and research on it, and we found that the workers who are engaged into waste business, waste trade, particularly into the collection and transportation, their life expectancy is 2/3 than the normal human being. And they are the most vulnerable people to all kinds of diseases. May it be ophthalmic diseases, dermatological diseases, respiratory diseases, all kinds of diseases. They are more vulnerable, and unfortunately, this is not considered as one of the hazardous industry or hazardous trade. ILO has not classified waste as a hazardous industry as yet.
What about operating costs? Are operating costs a driver for robotics and automation in India?
Operating cost is very less as compared to...
Less important than perhaps other markets.
Yeah.
Well, so in the collection business, what we often see is folks are coming to us saying that they want to be able to offer more services. For example, organics collection is an additional container that needs to be serviced by trucks. And rather than have to go out and buy more trucks, more drivers, how can you take the same fleet that you already have and expand its capacity? And how can you use technology to do that? So that's a question that we get posed on a regular basis. And we're seeing it happen in places like California.
I want to make a slightly different view on that. For me, the big problem will not be the jobs that will be lost by robots. I will tell you why. Because, at least in the Western world, the waste-related unions are the strongest one. So no one can impose them robotics without big social unrest. What will be done is that gradually, as they grow up, they will be substituted by more robotics. And suddenly there will be a day where all the old guys will be out and a new generation that will manage the robots. The big problem will be if this adoption of robotics, let's say in waste collection, will make us produce more waste that will be more effectively collected, or recycle more and drove robotics to recycling. What I want to say is that if you see what happened in general terms to all the previous revolutions, we learned to produce more stuff with less cost and less resources and more effectively. And instead of rebalancing the situation, we continue to increase consumption and production and resource depletion. That means that, I agree with Vivek, we have an opportunity to rebalance again. If that happens, it depends on a much more broad framework than the waste sector. Okay, let's move on. Now, in question 12, we ask them to rank the following developments in order of their impact on waste management and recycling in the coming 15 years. Once again, well, you know, when we make surveys, sometimes we rephrase some questions in order to see the compatibility of the answers, the cohesion. So once again, they rank again new materials and sensors, which means that the ones who replied this are really thinking about it. They put robots this time in the 3rd position instead of 7th. Mobile apps again are up, and Internet of Things and big data and artificial intelligence. Now, I have a question for you guys. The question is, can you speak right now for any substantial impact in our industry now or in the next 5 years from mobile apps and big data? Or is it just a virtual reality?
Can you repeat the question?
Big data's impact.
Yeah.
Is it real?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. Well, one of the challenges that we have is we do a great job of deploying our technology, okay? But one of the things that progress in technology and innovation is bringing is a change, and this kind of goes back to the last question, is a change in people's everyday responsibilities, right? So when you introduce new technology, you have to actually go to every department and you've got to share with them how they're going to interact with this technology, how this is going to impact their position, what new tasks and what new talents they have to learn, and what their process is in making the whole thing successful, right? So big data has absolutely done that. So people are having to learn how to use big data. If I give you all of these stats, if I can tell you that, you're doing 67 yards an hour instead of 72 yards an hour, your driver is not operating efficiently, he's not operating safely. If I can tell you all these things in real-time data, and then you don't know how to digest that data and how to manage the data or how to change your operation, what's the sense of having big data?
People need to know how to use the tools.
Exactly.
And be able to interpret
it's
the
not so
information.
hard to get big data, but it's challenging to learn how to use big data.
So to contrast with that point, I would say that big data has a lot of great applications, but what we've also seen from our experience is that providing what we would call small data or the right data can also have tremendous impact, right? And so the example I like to give is just being able to tell the location of a open-top roll-off container on a map, and going from a whiteboard or an Excel spreadsheet to be able to see the GPS locations on a digital map in real time, and the advantage that gives to a dispatcher, right? It's a small piece of information. I wouldn't put it in the category of big data, but it can tremendously impact the efficiency of the way that individual does their job.
Right.
So it doesn't always have to be big or intimidating to get value out of it.
Yep. But you still have to teach that dispatcher how to use it.
Sure.
Okay.
I argued earlier this year that big data doesn't really apply yet. It's not here. Our data is not big enough. It's targeted data. It's very specific. It's detailed. And like Jason says, how to use the data, or Don, I think, made that comment.
But you see a lot of the companies that are fairly big in big data, the Googles and Amazon and that, the amount of investment that they're doing in artificial intelligence just boggles the mind of what. Even that little thing that you have, that you talk to, the Echo that's in your bedroom,
Sure.
all of that data is being compiled and used by artificial intelligence. So one day you'll be talking about buying that, I don't know, TV, and all of a sudden you're going to get all these emails coming in about these sales. How did they get that data?
So how, as an industry, do we leverage that? And that's the question.
May I say that I want to share with you an example. I'm not going to tell the city. There is a city with 500,000 residents in Europe, and they have 1 million sensors related to waste management, because they have sensors in each and every bin. A big part of the city has the automatic collection system with the pipes and the sub-pressure system. They have sensors in the old landfill, a lot. They have a waste-to-energy plant which is full of sensors because it's pretty new. All the cars they use are full of sensors. So every year they collect something about 15 megabytes of data per user of the system, per resident. This is roughly a Kindle book of 90 pages. Now, I follow up this city and the evolution for many years. And all the previous year, They had 5 different software systems to collect the data, and they integrated it manually. They were working with Microsoft to integrate the system for 5 years, and they came up with a new commercial product. I think this will be one of the biggest challenges regarding big data, because it's another thing to have big data and another thing to pump from this data meaningful information. That takes a lot of effort, and there is competition between the companies that does not allow some time to integrate.
I have a point, like the industry here in the developed economies and industry down there in the emerging economies is altogether different. They can play with the big data, they can have the resources to have that and to analyze that and use that. But if you look at the emerging economies, particularly the collection and transportation businesses, basically with the micro, small, medium enterprises. So how the cost reliable will be this big data application?
I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I want to trigger you to something else also. The industry does not believe in driverless cars.
Yeah.
They believe that driverless cars will have the least impact. I fully disagree. I believe it will have a big impact pretty soon. But can you comment on that?
I think one of the things that's not on that list that's going to have a huge impact in the next 5 to 10 years is blockchain technology.
Yeah.
Blockchain.
Okay? I think blockchain technology takes big data and automates it.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be the next big, huge emerging market that we see in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to definitely impact us.
Okay.
What do we think about driverless cars? Now, when we say driverless cars, we're referring to autonomous solid waste vehicles ultimately, or we're operating in an environment of driverless vehicles with manned collection vehicles, or a little bit of both.
Both.
A little bit of both, right?
Driverless vehicles are here. So in off-road applications, they're already being used. So in landfill management, that yellow iron is being controlled 100% autonomously. And then we're starting to see applications, maybe not in door-to-door collection, but in long-haul transfer, where you're doing mostly highway driving. And then the door-to-door collection is going to come along in pretty short order.
He may not be a driver. He may be a monitor. The vehicle isn't completely unmanned, but he may be serving a different role.
Okay.
I think the technology's there for AI.
Let's move. So question number 13, which of the following areas will be impacted the most by the fourth industrial revolution? Now it's interesting. The participants rank first the reuse and redesign of products. These will have the most impactful. This will be most impacted by the fourth industrial revolution. Then second, they rank recycling, and very interestingly, third, hazardous waste treatment. At the top of the ranking, they put landfills. And just above landfills, waste prevention, waste collection is third from the end. What's your comments about it?
In my opinion, waste collection will be the most impacted area because the journey has already begun into that. May this be with the sensors or the using of Internet of Things through GPS, and mobile apps are already there. So I think with the growth and the development, this will have major impact than anything else, because now the cities, even within the emerging economies also, they are shifting to Internet of Things there.
I agree.
I would say it's hard. I would challenge the fact that if waste collection isn't going to be impacted, yet new materials and recycling is, I think as a result, collection would be impacted subsequent to those two things changing.
I got a question, though. Did we factor in the growth of the waste itself over the next 15, 30 years, right? So right now we're producing 230 million tons a year, 4.6 pounds per person per day, right? What's the population going to look like in 2030, right? Accordingly, by 2050, the population is supposed to double.
There is a huge possibility for that.
Right, so did we take that into consideration, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons, actually, I think it's a good argument for a lot of the robotics. I mean, with the growth today in the human resources in the waste industry, can we even sustain the services if we don't automate things given the growth of our population? We have to have some
very
innovation.
good question. Very, very good question. And let me add my own opinion. I would put waste collection first, recycling third, and second I would put landfills.
Yeah.
I believe landfills can be very easily automated.
Yeah.
And just because they have a lot of health and safety issues and potential accidents, they will be one of the first easy wins of the technology. Most of the technology is already here. It's just a matter of time to compile it. Even in Italy, in South Italy, we have driverless compactors, which is pretty easy. I mean, it's very easy to do it. Okay, let's move to the next. Do you think that the fourth industrial revolution will make circular economy a reality for most of the consumer goods? So we have 25% very optimists, 57% somehow, and 18% no. And keep this and comment together with this one. Please check the areas in which your organization should invest. So, interestingly, the first two areas for investment is mobile apps and new sensors.
Right.
Then third and fourth is social media and big data. New materials, digital utilities platforms. The last one is driverless cars and 3D printers. So, what's your comments about it?
I think what this tells me is that the things that are going to be most important is collecting the information and then being able to get it out to people in an actionable format effectively. And that's where you see the additions of mobile apps and social media from an education and marketing perspective becoming a tool that has been used by a lot of consumer internet companies for years now and is starting to find its way into the waste business.
No, I also agree that that's the area where one should invest into. And that will bring a lot of impact on the entire waste industry. So, and mobile app is one thing which everyone start using, and that will make the whole operation very effective and efficient. And responsive also, because that's also a big challenge in our part of the world, that particularly the collection and transportation that is not responsive. So to make it the mobile application and the social media, these two have a major role to play. And similarly, the sensors, like what we have seen, the processing industries are not working because of the quality of waste not delivered to the processing industry. So here the role of sensor comes as very important and significant. With that, they will get the quality waste, and quality waste will survive those plants which are there for processing. So entire waste industry is dependent on these three major things.
I think our industry has identified that a shift to the digital marketplace is what's working everywhere else, and we will bring it here, and we will use it, and it'll happen in our industry.
Okay. Let me ask you something a little bit outside of the survey. Do you think that there will be a time where we'll have, or maybe we already have, platform companies in waste management? Do you have already?
Yeah.
The kind of digital platforms, I mean.
It's interesting.
Companies like that will dominate in one or another way, or it's too fragmented?
I would agree it's a fragmented industry. It's still a very local business. The way garbage is collected in one part of the country is different than another part of the country for very specific reasons. It's customized to your community, and I think there would be some challenges in making that happen. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer because we don't have any, say, unified standards, so to speak. Guys?
Yeah, it's different from different parts of the country.
Yeah,
so.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will largely be up to regulators to decide that, with shifts towards franchise contracts versus open market competition. When you start implementing those franchise contracts, it'll be harder and harder for having that unified platform.
I want to make a small comment on that. I believe that one roughly underestimated trend of the fourth industrial revolution is the miniaturization of things. And I do believe that we are not far away, maybe 5 years or 10, from the day where we will have fully automatic sorting stations in each and every building. And these sorting stations could be very easily managed by a platform. So my own perspective is that maybe we don't have platforms in collection or in landfills and things like that, but the guy who provides the automatic sorting stations, he will get full power and full control of the good materials.
So I want to take it back to that circular economy slide. And in the most physical sense of the circular economy, a friend of mine mentioned, is there a way to leverage reverse supply chain management? The Amazon truck shows up at your house and gives you a package. Could you give him back your solid waste or recyclables at the same time?
Yeah, if they could make money on it, they would, right?
No, that's a very nice question because I was in Dubai working with drones because in Dubai they have already elaborated a system of drones to monitor illegal dumping. And there was a guy from Amazon that proposed exactly what you are saying. I'm bringing you a book with a drone. If you give me, let's say, 200 or 300 grams of aluminum, which is too much, you get a discount. And then it acquires a huge part of the sector and the best clean materials. Well, maybe it's too futuristic, but it's not out of the perspective.
The U.S. Post Office will accept a 70-pound box, pay one price for shipping. 70 pounds is about a month's worth of garbage at today's rates for a 2 or 3 person household. Right now, today.
I think it's way more realistic for the dry waste, for the cardboards and recyclable material as opposed to the producible waste.
Okay, let's move. Now, just instead of conclusions, we started this survey in November 2016. And here I have listed what happened until we finished it, which was June 2017. So, first, one more commercial robot for sorting recyclables from mixed waste stream was available. Second, we have the first wind power recycling robot in Netherlands that started its operations. Third, we have the first driverless waste collection experiment by Volvo. Fourth, we have the world's first mall for recycled and repaired goods in Sweden. Then we have several platforms and mobile apps for recycling systems in different parts of the world, some of them very advanced. Then we have more than 1,000 new patents for new composite materials that have been submitted. Then we have the so-called Internet of Bins, the incorporation of advanced sensors to become mainstream in specific European countries. We have the so-called Internet of Garbage Trucks by 3 different startups that instead of GPS, they integrate a whole software on the garbage trucks to collect much more data than the weight and the locations. Then we have the so-called Internet of Packaging, the idea to put sensors in the hazardous packaging materials so we can track them and bring them back. Then we have several startups that work to transform plastic waste. Some of them, they transform it to a kind of plastic wood. Some of them, one of them I'm consulting, they provide a kind of raw material that can substitute up to 60% of virgin material. And then we have the evolution of a technique that turns food waste into proteins. It's already 3 or 4 companies that are doing that, and then you use proteins for many applications. And finally, we have at least one chatbot, which is already available in USA, providing guidance for the maintenance of anaerobic digesters. So you don't need to know everything. There's a chatbot that gives you everything as you ask for. That happened in the last 8 months. Your comments.
Technology's here today. It's only going to get better. The more we use it, the more we work with it, the more we refine it, the more we understand the value it presents to our operations. I think it's limitless at this point. Guys?
Yeah, it's absolutely limitless as far as the what things that we see in our industry.
And it's growing exponentially. Exponentially. I always tell people, if I had to give an elevator speech as to why they should adopt technology, everybody falls off track. Whether you have technology or not, you're going to fall off track, right? The key to success isn't whether you fall off track. The key to success is how quickly you get back on track. And that's what technology does, right? It gives you the real-time information to immediately see, hey, this is not how we planned on doing this. We need to make some corrections.
Yeah.
So I think, again, 10 years ago, I was convincing people that they needed technology. Today, it's virtually non-existent that I walk in somewhere where somebody doesn't realize they need it. They just need to figure out how they're going to go ahead and deploy it.
Yeah, you can make those changes on the fly, real time.
Yep.
Make solid business decisions, be
Yep.
able to change your business for the better in an instant, rather than waiting for the end of the month to see
Right.
what
I
the
mean, if it takes you 2 days to figure out you're off track
Yep.
versus a month, you're going to be hugely successful. And that's where we're at today.
Deal.
I'm impressed with the speed at which we're moving. I think if you ask these same questions even a year and a half or 2 years ago, you'd get a completely different response. Going back to Don's point about 10 years ago, it was pulling teeth. And I think that it's going to continue to accelerate, and the technology we have on the market today is remarkable, and it's going to continue to get better.
In fact, technology is fast growing, and also we are depending more on the technology. That is also a thing, something by which the growth can be said relevant. Like both are proportionate to each other. In India, I'm just citing an example of India where we have become more internet savvy, and everything is now depending upon the internet and the sensors and all the technology. We are all technology driven, and particularly when it comes to the mobile apps, the entire life starting from the day in the morning till we sleep, everything is on that. So that accelerates the pace of technology coming into this sector also. And the other aspect of it is people were fed up. Particularly, I'm just talking about countries like India, Bangladesh, and nearby, like wherever the emerging, they were fed up with the kind of operations which we had, particularly in the collection and transportation. There was no transparency. There was no security of the worker. There was no dignity to the worker. Quality of waste was a far dream. And efficiency, you can't expect efficiency. And the responsive delivery of the services, that was out of question. So all those things put together have led to involvement of technology and rapid growth of technology, and depending the entire system on that. We also, as I shared earlier, we also developed an integrated platform wherein we are not taking in silo like sensors or mobile apps or anything. We have developed a WASTECON platform on which all the technologies put together will work for all the stakeholders, may it be for the user, for the monitoring purposes, for the social security purposes of the worker, and ultimately to bring change in the entire value chain of the waste management. And when we started this intervention, we were more concerned about responsive delivery as well as about the health of the workers who we consider as the most dignified, most valuable asset to the waste management chain. So this has helped a lot. Bringing this technology input has brought a lot of quality of life changes and improved quality of life changes into that.
Great points. Everybody, I know we're running a little bit long. Everybody's anxious to get to the next session. We did not get to the Slido questions, but wait, there's more. Tomorrow, the same group is going to spend some time at 8 o'clock in room 308 and take this a little bit deeper. We're going to learn more about each one of these folks and kind of what's going on. And I'm going to ask the folks in back if they could provide me with those questions for tomorrow's session. We will ask and address those questions tomorrow at 8 in room 308. I can't thank everybody enough for being here this afternoon. This was a great panel. If I could get an applause for everybody, I'd appreciate it.